Great. Well, thanks. So yes, my name is Christine Rolin, and yeah, I'm a senior project manager in the blue economy at Highlands and Islands Enterprise in Scotland. And I'll be speaking about supporting community-based enterprise and SMEs in the rural Scottish Highlands and Islands. So I only joined HEI, which is Highlands and Islands Enterprise, 2 months ago. And my main background is in seaweed. I've grown seaweed at several research institutes in Scotland and worked a bit in international policy development. So I've chosen to focus on seaweed as the sector to look at how we support the marine economy here in Scotland. And here we go. So first of all, just to give you an overview of Highlands and Islands Enterprise. So we are the Economic and Community Development Agency for the region. And the region extends across Shetland to Argyll and from Outer Hebrides to Moray. So it's a huge area covering more than half of Scotland's landmass. We have teams spread across the whole region who help communities and businesses to develop and grow. And the vision for Highlands and Islands is to become a prosperous, inclusive, and sustainable region that attracts more people to live, work, study, invest, and visit. And we have a couple of priorities, and they are to build successful, productive, and resilient businesses. We want to enable strong, capable, and resourceful communities and create the conditions for growth and a green recovery. So if we just start by looking at the region, there's less than 500,000 people living in this huge area. So it's quite remote and very dispersed population. 59% live in remote areas, 27% live in a large settlement, 22% of the region lives on an island, and 12% in a fragile area. So, but despite these challenges, or maybe because of them, we actually have 5.4% of the land is under community ownership. Now compare that to the rest of Scotland, where it's only 0.05%. And if we look at numbers of people who are self-employed, 11.2% are self-employed, while the rest of Scotland is 8.2%. So that could be that we have different types of businesses and sectors, but it does hint that there is a more entrepreneurial community. And the opportunity in this region especially lies in the marine economy. So we have 61% of the UK coastline. And when you look at the research grants that we lead, 93% of them are based in the marine economy. So this really highlights the uniqueness of the region and that we have a really strong specialization in the blue economy. There's a long tradition in marine fisheries, and over the last 50 years, we've developed a really strong aquaculture sector, both in salmon fishery, salmon aquaculture, as well as mussel aquaculture. And now more recently, we're looking at seaweed farming as well. We have also got a strong development within marine energy. So if we just highlight the seaweed topic, then first of all, I just want to say that seaweed harvesting has been going on for hundreds of years in Scotland, and through the history of Scotland, it's been a very integral part of the economy. It's especially based in the Outer Hebrides, so that's the islands in the far west, where it's been key in producing different compounds used in industry. So looking at how we support community enterprises and SMEs. So we've, this year, Southwest Mull and Iona Development, they set up the first community-owned seaweed farm in Scotland. And they had their first harvest in May this year. And HEI supported them by funding a graduate placement. So they funded 75% of a recent graduate to come and live and work on Mull. And that was really an integral part to support the development of the seaweed farm. We're also working with Barra and Watersay community. So they are still looking to develop a seaweed farm, but we are supplying a capital grant. So that helps by the whole design process and purchasing equipment to set up the farm. And their hope is that the seaweed farm will help diversify livelihoods for local fishermen. Similar to what we heard in Maine, there's quite a lot of creel fishermen who fish lobsters. So it's an opportunity for them to enter a different market. We have Klimaval, which is another community interest company. They have this project where they've been engaging with lots of businesses and different professionals and people across the region to really discuss how can we adapt our diets to become more sustainable in response to climate change. So they've had these projects looking at intertidal polyculture options and really trying to engage with people. And they participate in the Pathfinder program, which is a business accelerator program that we run, where they run through several courses and participate with other businesses. So there's a bit of B2B networking, and that helped them develop their business and like offering more into the future. So Orkney Food and Drink is a regional food group, and HEI funded them with a grant to help them invite a regional food group from Shetland, as well as Butte Kitchen, which is in the southwest of Scotland. And then they all went to Orkney together, where they saw what was happening at Orkney and different food companies. And it really provided a good opportunity for them to network and really strengthen that relationship between them. So Shore Seaweed is an SME. They mainly harvest wild seaweed that they use for different products. So a few years ago, we gave them an R&D grant, and that was to launch their new brand, which is Shore. And they've then developed this new business or product range. There's some seaweed crisps that are now really popular across all of Scotland. And it's really helped their business grow, and it increased the grant helped increase their processing facilities so they could really grow that business. And finally, I wanted to mention the Scottish Association for Marine Science. So it's a research institute that's got a high specialization in seaweed farming, and they received a capital grant to refurbish the seaweed nursery. And the seaweed nursery is an integral part in supporting the whole sector because it both provides research facilities, but it also has a commercial component, as they can sell seedlings to seaweed farms across the country. So it provides that key link in the chain to support the whole sector. And another type of support we have is office space. So in cities, startups can often get a desk in an incubator space, and that was really missing in the Highlands. So we have several offices that are spread across the whole region where startups as well as larger businesses can access office space. So they can either get a desk or even a whole floor where they can outfit their own labs. And the European Marine Science Park sits in the same campus that SAMS does. And there are several tenants there. They're all across marine businesses, and it provided a really good space, this enterprise park, where we have the scientific research as well as the SMEs growing into the marine sector. And this photo has been shared from Klimaval, and that's an example of the tide table where they invited people to come and sit in the intertidal. These are actually oyster boxes. So I just thought it was a really good project where they highlighted how you can engage people on sustainable seafood production. And if you'll excuse the pun, it led me to ask the question, what can HEI bring to the table? So in addition to all these programs we just outlined, from the business accelerators to capital grants and so on, we are now looking at developing a more focused strategy on how we can support blue economy growth. So because we are funded by the Scottish Government, our task is to deliver on Scottish Government policy. So at the moment, we are especially looking at things like just transition to net zero, that includes adapting to climate change. We also have recently had a new national strategy for economic transformation, which outlined a path to becoming a well-being economy. And then we have a vision for the blue economy as well. So within these policy frameworks, we now need to think about how can we best support the sector going forward. So it's thinking about the policy, but also we speak directly to businesses across the region, and we need to understand where are the pinch points of what is it the sector needs to grow. And then we'll try and develop a more cohesive plan going ahead and provide support, whether that will be through projects or really trying to leverage more funding into the region or through the government. That's basically what we'll be working on next. And I wanted to finish on a slightly different note, but I was really glad to be invited to the talk today. And specifically, I was invited because they were looking for women to be represented at the event. And it led me to ask the question, what does a normal entrepreneur look like? And unfortunately, it's not always like me or this woman in the picture. So I just thought I'd highlight some statistics which definitely shocked me. At the moment, female-led businesses only get 1% of venture capital. Women only lead 3% of FTSE 100 companies in the UK. And 19% of SMEs are led by women. And 38% of social enterprises are led by women. So when we're looking at how we can support community enterprises and SMEs, I just thought about, well, why do more women lead social enterprises, and what can we learn from that? And before we had this webinar today, Mac Dara made a really interesting comment about actually within the traditional fisheries communities, a lot of women are an integral part of these businesses. So maybe these numbers aren't actually reflecting the real world, and especially in the traditional blue economy, there are lots of entrepreneurial women already out there. But I just thought especially when we talk about community enterprises, something is slightly different. And I don't know what it is, but it'll be interesting to find out. Yes, and thank you very much for listening. And that's my email, so feel free to get in touch if you've got any questions.